On today's show,
Hunger, we can figure that out. Clothes, we can figure that out. However, when a child is coming to school and you know they're being neglected because you can take one look at them and see it,
yeah,
you can smell them,
yeah,
nobody at home to guide them, or there's abuse, that really breaks my heart because it's not their fault.
yeah,
They weren't born in this world to face the childhood traumas of their parents, if you will, or unhealed issues of their parents.
yeah,
And so that's what breaks my heart.
yeah,
Sometimes you go home and you have these children on your mind.
yeah,
And
yeah.
to the point where I've personally had to, like, I see a child with sneakers so bad, like holes in them, or socks so dirty that smell so bad, that I personally will go buy things and keep them in the office, so that way when they come, I can hand them something and say, here.
Welcome to Education Today. I'm your host, Solanke. I spent 15 years in the secondary classroom teaching English, reading, and social studies. I've also been on the other side as a parent of 3 children who have completed the formal schooling years of kindergarten through 12th grade and are now in the college and career stage. Now I'm here to have conversations with teachers, administrators, school staff, students, and parents about all things education. Join me as I cover current topics in education from preschool through to college, career, and beyond. So welcome to today's show. My guest is Hawa Gabriel, and our topic today is all about being a school nurse. Welcome to the show, Hawa.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. And tell me about your background in nursing. How did you get into nursing?
Well, actually, nursing is a second career choice for me. I have a prior degree in arts, majoring in philosophy.
Oh, wow.
So I noticed, it's a great conversation starter, beautiful party piece. However, when it came to jobs and career, there was really nothing much I could do with it.
Yeah.
So I'm out there working in human services, and then I ended up finding out that I was going to have my daughter.
Oh, wow.
So once I had my daughter, about a year and a half later, she's a year and a half old, I decided I wanted to do something that, I know I'm good at. And I see my mom, my aunts, I have a lot of women in my family who are nurses.
Oh, wow.
And so I decided, you know what, let me go for nursing. And I did. And here I am 15 years later.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you go the BSN route or the RN route?
I did go the BSN to RN route. And the good thing was I already had my prior degree. So I was able to transfer a lot of the credits.
Okay.
So I didn't have to spend a lot of time in the 4-year program. It was pretty much cut down into half.
Yeah, that's good. So from nursing, how did you get into school nursing?
Let's see. Funny enough, when I was in nursing school, I had an instructor. Her name is Judy Walsh. God bless her. She's still at UMass Boston, where is my alma mater.
Oh.
And she looked at me one day and said, you know what? You're going to be a good public community health nurse. And I looked at her like, what? Like, are you serious? Because back in those days, you went straight to the hospitals.
Yeah.
So when you graduated, you have to get that medical surgical experience, what we call floor nursing, quote unquote. And so I did that. However, I noticed after a year of being on the floor, I hated it.
Oh.
It wasn't me. Very stressful. I lost 10 pounds in a month. And some people, that's for them. They love it. However, I'm not a hospital nurse. So I left the hospital scene, and I still needed my experience as a new nurse. So I worked in long-term care, which would be like geriatrics, nursing homes. I did rehabs. And even then, I found that it wasn't my niche. I wasn't happy. So as I became more of a seasoned nurse, if you will, I moved to New York City 5 years into my career. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to try public health. So I became a public health nurse officially in New York City, So I've worked all the boroughs. I've been to people's homes, making sure they're getting the care they need,
Mm-hmm.
assessing, resource referral. And after that, I decided, well, let me do something a little different, something where I can be in one place. The hours are nice that will fit with my child, but also I'm still using my nursing skills and technique. And so that for me was school nursing.
Yeah. I find that having a child is often the motivating factor to somebody going into school nursing because of the hours,
Yep, you're definitely right about that.
Yeah, and the schedule. So what types of schools have you worked in, and how many years have you done school nursing?
Let's see. I worked in Boston before I moved to New York as a what they call per diem. So I was a floater.
Yeah.
So to be a floater, you basically are showing up to different schools, different days on assignment, or sometimes you'll cover for a nurse who's taking a vacation, maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to spread my wings that way and learn different schools, different areas of the city, different demographics, student population, teacher population. So I did that. And then when I moved to New York, if I backtrack a little bit, I did the public health and, the home nursing. And like I said prior, I got tired of that. So I decided to go back into school nursing in New York, where I can really say I got the meat and potatoes of nursing in terms of taking care of children who have psychosocial issues. I've worked in urban communities. So I've never done rural school nursing, which is another talent within itself, in terms of supplies, staffing. Urban nursing, we do get the support. We do have the supplies, if you will. However, our student population is much more complex.
Yeah.
So I've worked in schools that, you experience fighting, violence. And so kids will come in with cuts, scrapes, bumps due to fighting. Then, of course, you have kids who need to be educated and have to, do it outside of the home. And so there was a law passed in 1973 that allowed children to be able to attend public schools, despite whether they were disabled or not. So we have children that need care while at school. So some of them needed wound care, or we have procedural care, like if they're not able to urinate on their own, we call it catheterization. So you would assist in removing the urine from their body. So school nursing is complex in that you're getting an array of type of students with different needs, and you have to be flexible enough and use your quick-witted, agile frame of mind to take care of these kids on the spot as needed, and also helping the families as well.
Yeah. So it's more than just passing out Band-Aids and sanitary towels, which I think some people have that perception.
No, we call it cupcake schools. Those would be like the schools where, like you have stated, it's Band-Aids, and they were playing outside, they scraped their knee, they have a boo-boo, and you still get those. And even in those cases, you still have to be with the student, be present, because it could be a very traumatic experience to be running in the playground and fall and bump your head. And so they come to the office screaming and crying. So, not only a protector and a caretaker, but also a soother. A school nurse is a healer, a counselor, we're everything. And right. But then you also have the children who are on medications for attention deficit, depression, anxiety. And then we have diabetics, where we have to check their sugars before they eat. So that way they're not plummeting with the sugar levels, or they're not going so high that, both could be medical emergencies. So again, school nursing has evolved over the years. And it's not as easy as some people would think it is.
Yeah. What does a typical day in the life of a school nurse look like? What's expected of you?
Show up on time. So that's number one, because once the children are in the building, a nurse is expected to be in the building. In case anything goes wrong, we do tell staff there's always 911. You can use your CPR. However, a lot of schools find that it's comforting to have someone there. that they know is medically trained and that can handle any issues that may arise. So a calm day would be you show up, you go to your office. Of course, for me, I've always had like a little me time, tea time. Just start to prepare for whatever kind of day I may have. I don't know what can happen because with school nursing, it's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
So I can have an easy day where I'm just giving out scheduled meds and seeing a few students with minor issues.
Yeah.
On another day, I could have a student who goes into cardiac arrest or can have a concussion, especially the sports players.
Yeah.
And so they'll come in after a football game and they'll tell you, oh, I have a headache. I'm seeing blurry. I feel like I want to vomit. And then, you have to use your nursing technique and skills. And that's why it's so important to have that necessary training before you get to the schools.
Yeah. Because
we work alone and we don't have someone to bounce off of. We do have our supervisors that we can reach out to, but when a student is in front of you, de-escalating, or let's say their blood pressure goes from 140 over 80 to 80 over 30, that's a major problem. So we have to know how to think quickly and on our feet. So a school nurse is a nurse that has to be prepared for anything.
Yeah.
Because anything can happen at any given time. Even as soon as you get there and a student is getting off the bus, a student could have issues from home. The parent puts them on the bus. They're not feeling well. And as soon as they get off the bus, they're sent to the nurse's office because of a chief complaint of, I don't feel good. My head hurts. I feel dizzy. I feel like my sugar's low.
I feel like that happens a lot, actually.
It really does. And then you have sometimes where kids come to school sick and you're asking, okay, did mommy give you medication? Yes. Okay, so that's why your temperature is normal. If you didn't have medication, your temperature would be sky high.
Yeah.
And then you will call home, call mom or dad or whoever is listed at wherever the number is directing you to. And then they'll say, I can't leave work because, of course, a lot of employees, it's hard for parents, especially parents of immigrant children, or like immigrants that come to the U.S. and are working under the table or don't have the sick time to take time off to stay home with their kid or to come pick them up early and go home with them. So they end up staying in the office with me all day sometimes.
Or one parent families also, I found.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very much so. So as a school nurse, you have to be very cognizant of the area you work in, the demographics, the economics, because like a place like in Bronx, New York, where I worked for 3 years as a school nurse for the New York City Department of Ed, there's a lot of immigrants, we call them crossers. So many who left Central America, South America, crossed the border illegally and are now in the United States and have migrated to New York.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of them are doing odd jobs. And so we have to understand that if we call and they can't come get them right away, or they're not able to take them to the doctor right away, we have to work with the families now to put a plan in place as to how can we do this while they're in school, or are there other family members who can help. So again, we're not only serving that one student, we're serving the whole community as a whole to keep them healthy.
Yeah. We have similar demographics in certain parts of Florida down here with the immigrant population. So, yeah, I understand that. The school nurses' offices, from what my experience is, it often becomes a place where some students will gravitate towards. It's like a safe space in school. Have you found that?
It is a safe space. Exactly. And now they have literature and signs that we post. I'm no longer a school nurse. I actually left school nursing last year. However, even up until then, we have signs that say this is a safe zone, and I've had students come and talk to me about the most personal, the most trying issues that they could be going through. They trust us. Nursing is the most trusted profession.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's known to be. So yes, it is known as a safe place. And even for staff, believe it or not, I've had staff come in to talk to me about their personal issues or health problems that they may be having, or their husband or their children or grandchildren may be having. So we are like that safety net for the whole school when it comes to the psychosocial and also the medical piece.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting you
Yeah.
said about staff members too. I remember going to the nurse's office when we were teaching during COVID and thinking something is wrong. Please check my blood pressure. And it was, of course, it was sky high. Never been high before. And she was like, oh,
Mm.
oh, thank you so much for checking it. Don't worry, you're like the fourth teacher down here today with the same problem. I was like, this is not good. But speaking of COVID, you
Mhm.
mentioned that you were a school nurse during COVID. What was that like?
Yes. Oh man. At this point, I had just left New York in August. So I came to Boston and I got a job at Boston Public Schools
Yeah.
as a school nurse. So I'm working, I'm happy. So at this point I'm at a huge school, about 1,080 kids total. It's a combination of 6 through 12. So
Mm-hmm.
you have middle schoolers and high schoolers in different buildings, but same school.
And one nurse?
And two nurses.
Oh, okay.
So depending on the ratio, Boston just put into place about 4 or 5 years ago that there should be one nurse in every school at
Okay.
least, instead of a nurse sharing schools, going
Mm-hmm.
back and forth.
Yeah.
Or some schools have no nurse, which I'm sure you have heard of being in the education. You
Yeah.
already know.
Mm-hmm.
And so thankfully I had another nurse. So every day she would check the computer and on the internet and say, you know, it's coming, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? What's coming? And she would say, COVID. Oh, COVID's coming. Don't worry. We're going to get it. And I'm looking at her like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Funny enough, fast forward to March of 2020, when the mayor of the city of Boston shut down the Boston Public Schools for 5 weeks due to this
Mm-hmm.
virus that no one knew about.
Yeah.
We've heard about it, but there was no research done, no literature, no medicine, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mayor decided to shut down for 5 weeks. Honestly, all of us as staff were excited, like, oh, we get a free vacation.
Yeah.
Because as you know, school schedules are very grueling. 5 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
you get set vacation days. So for us, it was like, oh, a much needed break. Wow,
Yeah.
this is great. It'll just go away and we'll go back to business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
After the 5 weeks, still the mayor says, you know what? We're not going to go back for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're like, okay, this is serious. And
Yeah.
at this point, we're seeing people dying around us.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing Governor Cuomo on CNN every day
Mm-hmm.
giving a report. The numbers are rising. So now this is getting scary, but we understand why we're not in the schools.
Yeah.
However, the effect that it had on the children was devastating.
Now,
Especially
I'm sorry, did you
yes.
guys go to virtual learning that
We
at that
did.
time? Okay, sorry.
We did. So the first 5 weeks, I feel like no one knew what to do. Teachers didn't know what to do. Us nurses, remember, our job is hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you a nurse when you're not taking care of people in the school?
Yeah.
However, as time went, we as nurses in BPS, Boston Public Schools, found a way to make it work. So we did a lot of case management, telephonic.
Okay.
So reaching out to families on the Alpha list and just checking in. How are you? Is everyone okay? However, some of these phone calls became conversations of, I don't have any food.
Oh.
I'm homeless right now.
Yeah.
And so I have to say, Boston Public Schools did a wonderful job of having food kitchens
Mm-hmm.
where people can go pick up food.
Yeah.
Case management in terms of COVID advice, places where to go get tested for COVID. And also, we just did a lot of psychosocial support and emotional support because, you know, when the children come to school, a lot of times you don't know their background. You don't know their families, but with COVID, we started to soon realize that we have families that are living in shelters, sending their kids to school.
Yeah.
Then there was a lot of, then we were afraid for the children who were living in homes that would have domestic violence.
Yeah.
Because now they're home all day.
Yeah.
Remember, school is the safe place.
Yeah.
School is the place they come to get away from that. And so now they're home maybe with their abuser and those kids. And thankfully, we would have like interdisciplinary team meetings where you'd have the school psychologist, teacher, special education, nursing. And we all come together a few times a week to discuss the students that were high on our radar, high on alert, and how we go about to help. So then you'd have a lot of counselors, teachers making home visits.
Yeah.
even some nurses would go as far as to at least go to the door of the home to give food. Because remember, we're still in the pandemic. We don't
Yeah.
know anything about COVID at this point. So
Yeah.
we're just masking up and meeting people at their front door to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have to say, we were doing it on the fly.
Mm.
We were doing it on the whim. We had no
I think we
playbook.
all were.
Yes, all of us had no playbook. But as
Yeah.
time went, because remember, the pandemic lasted for 2 years while in school.
Yeah.
Now they've since lifted, mask mandates,
Mm-hmm.
and kids are still very much affected by what happened. But
Yeah.
those 2 years, it did evolve into more research. And even like I was part of a nurse group that we wrote a COVID protocol
Mm-hmm.
for the Boston Public Schools and how to mitigate measures in preventing COVID from spreading. And what do we do if we have a student in school with COVID, to testing in school, testing in schools,
Yeah.
which was a major piece in tracking COVID and reducing the numbers of people getting infected while in school.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when the kids returned to school after COVID, while COVID was still going on, really, but when they returned to brick and mortar schools, as a nurse, did you see an increase in certain issues with students that you perhaps didn't see so much before COVID?
Yes. Depression,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
social anxiety,
yeah.
untreated health issues.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe diabetics who came to us every day.
Yeah,
Now, because they're home, if mommy's going through some issues and not really able to be attentive to their child, then their diabetes is haywire.
yeah,
And trying to connect with the medical team outside of the school who cares for the child to make sure that at least they're getting to their appointments, to the point where sometimes we'd have to threaten to call the state.
Mm-hmm.
We in Massachusetts is DCF,
Yeah.
Department of Children and Families. In New York City is ACS,
Mm-hmm.
which is the same, Department of Children and Families. And we would have to threaten to say, if you don't get this kid to the doctor, or if you're not going to respond to our calls, and this even while in school, and this child's sugar keeps running high, the glucose level, which is dangerous, we're going to have to call.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we would even have to take measures like that.
Yeah.
And even with neglect, because a lot of parents were losing their jobs,
Yeah.
and economics definitely played a big role in the fact that a lot of people were stressed out.
Yeah.
And just didn't know what to do. So we saw that it affected the children a lot. So we became like their home. We became like their family in terms of making sure that, their needs were getting met. Even food insecurity.
Yeah.
We learned a lot of people were having food insecurities, and that school was the only place that you could get 2 meals a day.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you go home and there's no dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it brought to light a lot of the social plight in this country.
Yeah.
COVID just shined a light on what really is important and what this country needs to work on.
Yeah. So now you've touched on that. Let me ask you this question. From your work in a variety of different schools, what are some of the ways that poverty and lack of stability at home, like in a home life, impedes a student from getting a good education? Obviously, there's the obvious that if you're not eating at home, it's hard to concentrate, and to learn.
Exactly. What happens is we have kids, they don't like us saying this, but we call them frequent flyers. So the children who come to the nurse's office every day, multiple times a day. And a lot of times you have to decipher, is this really psychosomatic, or is this a real live situation we're dealing with in terms of the pain? So I'll give you an example. If a kid is not eating breakfast at home because of lack of, they're waking up late.
Yeah.
Because mommy, a lot of times some kids will come disheveled. You can tell their laundry wasn't done.
Yeah.
Because of the certain level of neglect. So now they get to school. My stomach hurts, my stomach hurts, my stomach hurts. So you take the necessary temperature, you do all the assessing, and then it dawns on you like, wait a minute, did you eat breakfast this morning? And they'll say no. Then I'll just say, well, why? Oh, I woke up late and a lot of times they're bringing themselves to school, or
Yeah.
mommy didn't have enough to give them. So then, as a school nurse, what we would do is secure food from the cafeteria in the
Mm-hmm.
office,
Yeah.
and we'd make sure that they eat and then send them to class. So
Yeah.
poverty affects concentration because if you don't have food, you can't focus.
Yeah.
Poverty affects their self-esteem because if mommy doesn't have enough money to do laundry on a daily basis, if she's going to a laundromat or
Mm-hmm.
he's going to a laundromat, their clothes aren't clean. That
Yeah.
affects their self-esteem and the way their peers see them. And
Yeah.
even we've had kids where we've had to have supplies, deodorant,
Mm-hmm.
toothpaste, toothbrush. Some schools even have a washer and a dryer. Other schools have closets where it's called Katie's Closet.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like a Massachusetts thing where the school would have an agreement with Katie's Closet, and what they do is they'll get clothes from like Old Navy, places that want to donate and
Mm-hmm.
get rid of their surplus or things that
Oh.
didn't sell.
Oh, so it's not
So we
second
would
hand. Brand
no,
new.
these are brand new.
Oh
They have
wow.
like tags on them.
Oh wow.
So we have a lot of children who will come in either through, oh, my pants ripped, or I have my monthly,
Mm-hmm.
my pants were soaked, or kids who didn't even have a winter jacket
Yeah.
because their parent couldn't afford to buy them a
Yeah.
proper one. So, we would have a key to Katie's Closet, walk them down, and then they can choose whatever they want.
Oh
It's like a
wow.
store,
Mm-hmm.
and it has hangers and sizes, and they choose whatever they want. The only thing that we had to do was note what was taken
Mm-hmm.
out, and then they go on their way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I can say the education system, especially in Massachusetts, does try to address a lot of the social ills in terms of, making sure these kids are at least cared for when they're in our hands.
Yeah.
Another thing would be the violence.
Oh
Poverty
yeah.
does breed a lot of violence. So we would see kids that are gangs fighting after school,
Yeah.
over like territory,
Mm-hmm.
or if they have a quote unquote beef outside and they see each other in school, they're not going to wait till after school
Yeah.
to fight. They're going to do it right in the hallway. I've had a child where their head was smashed
Oh
into a
my
glass.
goodness. Wow.
And this was right when the bell rang and I'm about to go home. And this is another thing. You have to be prepared to be called even when it's time to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I didn't go, you don't know if this child has a head trauma. And come to find out, he needed stitches on his face. I had to convince him for about an hour to go to the hospital to
Oh
get
wow.
the stitches. So we see a lot of violence
Yeah.
because poverty breeds violence.
Yeah.
Why? Because people are trying to do things and get money and funds and by any means necessary.
When the kids
Mhm.
when the kids in trouble for fighting, then they get suspended, then they're out of school. Then they're not learning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're not learning. And our mayor, Michelle Wu, and even the mayor prior, they put into place a program where you don't suspend the child so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You try to mediate and talk it through. But then what happens is, what is the reprimand for being violent in school?
Yeah.
So the old way of doing it would be, yes, to suspend or expulsion or send them to a special school, like school
Yeah.
for kids with behavioral. But then now you have a whole school with many children that have behavioral problems,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing but upheaval all day.
Mm.
So this is a problem that's still occurring, and the city is still trying to figure it out. Because what do you do when a kid is violent? I mean, you
Yeah.
have to have some type of reprieve, but like you rightly stated, if you send them away, then they're still not learning, and then it could breed even more problems while they're out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There was a time when my school was on the news for having the most number of fights in a day. Every time the bell rang in between classes, there was a fight.
There's a fight.
It was so
Exactly.
bad.
No, it's that. Yeah. I mean, I agree because like these kids see each other,
Mm-hmm.
and like adults, we're civil. If we have a problem with one another, it's more like, okay, can I pull you to the side and have a conversation, or I'm just not going to say anything to you.
Yeah.
But with children, they don't see that. I mean, they just see fire,
Yeah.
red. They're going for the jugular, and I think too, it's a thing to impress their friends
Yeah. Yeah.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have poverty, violence, hunger, parents who are frustrated, who feel so distraught and downtrodden with their life. How can they focus on their child's life?
Yeah.
you know, and so then you start to question, should the child even be in that home?
Yeah.
And then we're mandated reporters, like you would also,
Mm-hmm.
as a teacher, would know. Yeah, so we have to file now with the state, and again, a multitude of issues with poverty, and that's why I'm glad you brought that question up, because I think poverty is the root of so many
Yeah.
issues
And
in society.
as you said, COVID exposed and pulled back the layers of a lot of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As a school nurse, what's the most heartbreaking thing that you've seen?
Wow. For me, neglect and abuse.
Yeah.
Um, Hunger, we can figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Clothes, we can figure that out. However, when a child is coming to school and you know they're being neglected, because you can take one look at them and see it,
Yeah.
you can smell them.
Yeah.
Nobody at home to guide them, or there's abuse, that really breaks my heart, because it's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
they weren't born in this world to face the childhood traumas of their parents, if you will, or unhealed issues of their parents.
Yeah.
And so that's what breaks my heart, is when I see children who don't deserve it. You know, they come to school and they're scared.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have so many stories in my head, I couldn't even begin to remember or think about individuals, but overall is when I see children who are neglected and abused. That would make me livid, and then I would get sad. And sometimes you go home and you have these children on your mind.
Yeah.
And to the point where I've personally had to, like, I see a child with sneakers so bad, like holes in them, or socks so dirty that smell so bad, that I personally will go buy things and keep them in the office, so that way when they come, I can hand them something and say, here. Yeah.
So that leads to my next question. It's about secondary trauma. So in my school, the schools I've worked in, I've noticed that I guess we call them student services, social workers, school psychologists, school nurse, guidance counselors, you guys are all on the front lines when it comes to seeing student trauma and to hearing those stories and seeing those stories. And I've seen colleagues get secondary trauma, and to the point where they get burnt out. So how do you stop yourself from being burnt out after seeing so many sad stories, or hearing so many sad stories again and again and again, year after year?
A lot of self-care.
Yeah.
Taking time off when necessary. Because there's not many school nurses, a lot of nurses don't go into it, because we do get paid much lower than your hospital nurses, or however, I have to say Boston is different. Boston is one of the highest paying districts in the country.
Oh, wow. Maybe I should move.
Yeah, I know, right? Be ready for the cold, but we'll welcome you with open arms. I'm telling you, but yeah, we have teachers that come from all over the country to teach here, because of the reputation of our school system, which is relatively still good compared to the rest of the nation, even though we may not think so, and the pay as well.
Yeah.
So I have to say, but for me, it's still a shortage. So to take days off is like a treat.
Yeah.
So for me, thankfully, there's short days. So, you go in, you do the work, and you push through. And then after school, I try to find things that interest me, like my hobbies, being with family, having other nurses to talk to, bouncing things off of my family, and just having someone to vent to. And sometimes just getting some sleep.
Yeah.
Drinking a hot cup of tea, maybe binging on Netflix, anything to just get your mind off of some of the traumas that you've seen all day.
Yeah.
From the fights and to now gun violence, where kids now are being found with guns in schools.
Yeah, it's scary.
And weapons. And it's to the point where, yes, we're the nurses and everyone usually loves us. However, what if a student decides he's mad at one of us?
Yeah. So
these were the fears that I was starting to live with. And when I decided, okay, I think it's time for me to move on, and I didn't need the hours anymore because my daughter, she's a big girl now. She's in
Mm-hmm.
college. So for me, it was a personal decision where I couldn't do it. And I was burnt out,
Yeah.
especially after COVID.
Yeah.
And a lot of nurses left school nursing. Even teachers, there was a whole wave
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
people who were up for retirement or close to it that left.
Yes. And we saw that too.
Um,
Yeah.
you saw that too in
A
Florida.
lot.
Yeah.
And sick leave, a
Yeah.
lot of sick leave. Yeah.
Oh, a lot of sick leave.
Yeah.
Even myself, I remember um, having like sciatica, which is something that I've never experienced before. When I
Mm-hmm.
asked my doctor, like, and she told me, a lot of it too is stress.
Yeah.
And so, and with the constant moving and up and down and being called on a walkie talkie, having to run down the hallway to attend to a student who fell on the floor, who's in a fight. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and you get pulled in so many different directions. And then there's the politics of nursing. You're trying to do your job, but then you have administration with their issues and
Yeah.
their rules
Oh,
and
yeah.
how much we can do in our scope of
Mm-hmm.
practice that it just became very frustrating.
Yeah.
So for me, I had to leave. But while I was there, I did take time off as I needed to. I didn't care about who thought what and if they could find a nurse or not. At that time, that's not my problem because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I come first. And if something happens to me, who's going to feel it more? My
Yeah.
family,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I had to be there for them. And then
Mm-hmm.
I took like short weekend trips when I could, anything just to soothe myself and just to not think about what am I going to meet on Monday morning,
Yeah.
especially after the weekend.
Yeah. We talked about a lot of the responsibilities that a school nurse has and that the school has to, and you mentioned not just the student, but to the community and the families. But some people complain that there are responsibilities that should be on the shoulders of the family that have been shifted to the school. What do you say about that complaint?
I totally agree. It all starts from the home.
Yeah.
I mean, they can come to school and we can do everything in our power to have the child up and running at their best optimal capacity. However, all that will go out the window once they get home
Yeah.
because the parent is not helping with the homework. The parent is not showing up to the teacher parent meeting.
Yeah.
If you're calling the parent for medication that the child needs, you do have parents that are very diligent. They'll make sure the medication's there, especially if it's a psych medication, if you
Mm-hmm.
will.
Yeah.
But then you have other parents who are just so nonchalant that you're hunting them down
Yeah.
and you're saying to yourself, wow, it's your child. Don't you want them to be successful in school? But
Yeah.
then again, it goes back to their own traumas that they're trying to work through if they
Yeah.
are. So, yes, the family plays a big role. And sometimes I don't like when they blame the schools
Mm-hmm.
because we're only a fraction of it.
Yes.
Mind you, yes, they do spend so many hours with us per day, 5 days a week, and even after school.
Mm-hmm.
However, before they became a kindergartner or a preschool, they started at home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and before they come to school and after they leave school, they go home or they leave from home. And so, if you don't have that foundation and that support, then they're already at a disadvantage. So, whatever we do is like a band aid,
Yeah.
but it's not going to solve the problem unless the family's on board and is actively involved with us as well.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
enjoy your little pun just now about a band-aid.
Oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And we're not covering a wound that they made outside. You know what I mean? It's a multitude of wounds, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I always say that nursing, just like teaching, is a calling, and it definitely sounds that you are called to nursing because you seem to have a heart for people and a heart for
mhm,
children. I know you're not in school nursing right now, but you seem to have a heart for children. And
mhm.
it sounds like you're a wonderful nurse, and it sounds like you were an awesome school nurse. So thank you
Oh,
just for
thank you.
sharing your experiences with us today.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're
I'm glad
welcome.
I was able to, and I hope this helps somebody else out there
Uh,
who's thinking of doing school nursing. It's a great profession.
yeah, especially if you
Yeah.
have kids at home, the schedule is great.
Oh, the schedule is beautiful. I mean, you get the same vacations, all holidays, and it's a way where you could still be a mom to your children and still have that after school time,
Yeah.
but you can still work outside the home
Yeah.
and make a good living. So,
Yeah. Thank you so much. Hawa Gabriel, thank you.
Thank you, Selka. Take care.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Education Today. We'll be back next time with more current topics on all things education. In the meantime, you can email any questions or comments you have about the show to edtodaypodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you are listening so we can continue to expand our reach. We are listener supported, so if you're able to make a small monthly donation, you can do so by clicking the Support This Podcast link at the bottom of the show notes. Check out my blog for more about my experiences as a classroom teacher at medium.com/@SOCO. That's medium.com/@SOHKOR. You can also find me on Instagram at SOCO_rights. That's SOHKOR_rights. See you next time, and thank you again for listening.